Democracy. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak before some of our country's aspiring lawyers. We all know that law school is not for the weak of heart. It is for the brave and the fervent, the resilient and the unyielding, and those unwilling to compromise their values and standards. Today, you have proven that great things can be accomplished with hard work and determination. So, class of 2018, congratulations for a job well done. But today is not just a day of celebration. It is also an opportunity to be proud of how you have thrived the past few years. You faced daunting recitations, piles of readings every day, and incredibly long cases that sometimes did not make sense. I know the feeling that there seems to be little time for anything else in your life, and you find yourself racking your brain, wondering why in the world you're still striving. But all of these challenges have tested your grit. These obstacles have prepared you to face the world with courage in your heart. There are many ways to be brave. Sometimes bravery involves defending a hard case in court or laying down our lives for something bigger than ourselves. Sometimes it means confronting our mistakes, and dealing with failure takes a lot of courage and deserves much respect. The world has rapidly changed from when you first entered FEU, and it continues to be in a state of flux. The cost of living has gone up tremendously, and as a mother of 3, I know the struggle of making do with very little while encouraging our children to dream audaciously of the future. How do we make them believe that great things are possible when today our people have to choose what meal of the day to eat, while parents have to work overtime just to send their children to school? Hope seems to be eclipsed not only by our daily struggles, but also by the increasing erosion of the values we hold on to dearly as a people. At work, the working class is faced with new technologies that are causing deep disruptions in the nature of work. There are still not enough jobs, and due to technology, our people may lose the ones they have. We make sacrifices to send our children to school, only to find that there are not enough jobs for them to when they graduate. Social media, the very means to connect people, sometimes sow division and hatred instead. Expressing dissent and defending democracy cost a heavy price, while judicial independence is under attack, as we have seen in the use of the quo warranto petition against Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. Rule of law and the protection of human rights are now being set aside as unnecessary bureaucracy and inconvenience. Some argue that this is necessary for the sake of safety and security. But we begin to question, at what point has it become all right for our people to stop protecting human rights and instead start condemning it and its defenders? And do we feel safer now? Just yesterday, Assistant Prosecutor Madonna Joy Tanyan from the Office of the Ombudsman was stabbed at a sidewalk at 10:30 in the morning and died. She was 5 months pregnant. We once stood proud of our beautifully written Constitution, with a preamble that highlights how we revere our independence and democracy under the rule of law and a regime of truth, justice, freedom, love, equality, and peace. And yet, here we are, watching while our Constitution is casually dismissed. Is it any wonder that our people are now at a loss, not knowing where to go for protection when aside from the questions regarding the safety and protection of human rights, especially of our country's poor, our security and sovereignty as a nation are threatened by nuclear strike-capable bombers in the Paracel Islands and the incursion of China on our territory. This is not who we are as a people. The Philippines has a long history of commitment to the principles of human rights and the rule of law. Countless Filipinos have paid for freedom with their blood. We as a nation have a deep respect for equality and individuality, and it shows in how we live. Filipinos working and living in every country of the world, as well as those who are domiciled here, belong to the best in their professions. We are known for our industrious nature, warmth and loving service. We are passionate in our drive for justice and fair play, for equality and inclusivity, for hard work and excellence. We deserve to enjoy the change we have longed for, not just for our children's children, but for our own sakes too. We deserve better. We all do. My dear graduates, these are why you are called for such a time as this. Our world today not only needs excellent lawyers, but brave ones who are willing to take the narrow road, to do what is right and what is just no matter the cost. And I believe that in this room we can find those people. Sometime soon you will be taking the bar exams, and you will be asked to swear an oath before God and country to uphold the Constitution and to practice the profession to the best of your abilities. When that time comes, be brave enough to answer these difficult questions. Will you fight for those who need you most, not just those who can pay you more? Will you always fight for what is right and what is just, no matter the risks and the inconvenience? How strong is your commitment to never settle for the comfortable and the safe? To never compromise principles in the name of power and privilege? My own path to becoming a lawyer has been very long and circuitous. My father was a long-time RTC judge in Naga, where I come from. And as the eldest in the family, I was expected to follow in his footsteps. I took up economics in UP, and after college, I was expected to go straight to law school. I entered UP as a very shy and very apolitical provinciana, who found it a bit weird that many of my classmates were active in street demonstrations. However, the sight of Ninoy Aquino's lifeless body on the airport tarmac during my sophomore year changed me. It started my political awakening. I then became involved in the build-up which culminated into the People Power Revolution during my senior year. That path pushed me in a different direction. Infused with a desire to be part of the rebuilding of our nation, I wanted to work for government and be part of the change that was happening. My father allowed me to take a year off before law school. So I applied for work at a government agency back home called the Bicol River Basin Development Program. There, I met my boss and my future husband, Jesse, who, like me, went home to Naga to work for the government for the first time. We got married less than a year after we first met. When my husband was asking for my hand in marriage, my father would not agree until he promised him that he will make sure that I will still proceed with my plan of studying law. I resigned from work after we got engaged and applied for a teaching position at a local university. So I studied law in the evening while teaching economics full-time in the daytime. All the while, grappling with motherhood and keeping house for Jessie, who at that time had already run for mayor and won. It was not easy. Many times I wanted to quit, but my husband wouldn't hear of it because honestly, he was scared of my dad. With all this on my plate, it took me a very long time to finish law. I think 6 or 7 years. It was an election year when I graduated, so I decided to postpone taking the bar. When I eventually reviewed, I decided to do so here in Manila with a mistaken belief that I would be able to concentrate better. How wrong I was. I could not focus and kept on shuttling back and forth to Naga City to be with my family, as it was my first time to be away from them. And as a student, I struggled with remedial law. And the irony of it was that my father was a civil procedure and remedial law review professor. To make matters worse, after my third Sunday exam, my eldest child, Aika, got sick with dengue and was hospitalized. I went home to Naga to be with her and got back the Thursday before my fourth Sunday, and it was remedial law. Expectedly, I did not pass on my first try, and I almost got DQ'd in remedial law. I did pass on my second try, 3 years, another baby, and another elections later. I remember having to do a double time because by then, the National Internal Revenue Code had already been revised, and a new family code was already in effect. Civil code pa yung pinag-aralan namin. At the time I passed, I knew that I wanted public service lawyering. I joined PAO, and those of you who may end up choosing this track will understand when I say that there is nothing like the experience. The workload was horrendous, and all my Saturdays were spent in jails interviewing clients. But the rewards were also immense. When you defend those who have nothing to give back, when you explore the full benefits of the law for those who have very little in life, when the rule of law provides hope for those who think they will never see its face, you are somehow changed. I remember spending one Christmas Eve in jail because my client, who was incarcerated for a non-bailable offense, delivered a baby well ahead of the appointed time. Until now, I can still hear in my head the sound of metal window rails of my client's cells being struck in joy and excitement every time they see me enter the jail premises for my regular Saturday client calls. But I could not stay in PAO. I was assigned to defend clients my husband as mayor filed cases against: drug users and pushers, pwedeng and illegal gambling collectors, etc. When my husband understood that it was part of my work and they too had their rights to be defended, I felt it was time for me to serve in another way. That was when I decided to join a legal resource non-government organization called Saligan, where we sought to empower marginalized sectors by teaching them of their rights under the law and showing them how to defend themselves. We worked with farmers and fisherfolk, laborers and the urban poor, indigenous peoples, women and children. It was during my years in Saligan that I learned to listen more than speak. I learned how to employ empathy above any skill that have been taught in classrooms and in our textbooks. As we took up the fight for those who had less in life, we finally understood that the law is a very powerful instrument that should be a tool for inclusivity more than anything else. I spent a decade doing alternative lawyering work and would have been happy to stay there forever, but life had other plans. I lost my husband in a plane crash so unexpectedly. Not only was I left with 3 children to take care of single-handedly, I was also suddenly thrust into the world of politics to carry on the legacy he left behind. To be very candid, I believe it was the narrative of lawyering in action among the poor that inspired voters. That what resonated with our people is the idea that the rule of law benefits all, and not just the privileged few. And it is just right that we expect every government official to protect that ideal. When I took my oath as the duly elected Vice President, I swore to defend the Constitution and to provide justice for every Filipino, not just a few. From the onset, my vision was clear: to uplift the lives of our people, lalong-lalo na yung mga nasa pinakalaylayan ng lipunan. But we discovered that our office had a very limited mandate and resources to implement programs and projects. In fact, the Office of the Vice President has one of the smallest budgets in the bureaucracy. We were expected to do only ceremonial functions for 6 years. But I told my staff that we could not sit idly by and do nothing for 6 years. We decided to find a way to disrupt and fulfill our vision, and our solution was a program we now call Angat Buhay. With the help of partners from the private sector, local governments, development organizations, and the civil society, we are able to bring those at the edges to the center and help where there is greatest need. Almost every week since I took my oath in 2016, we visit the farthest and the poorest communities in the country and see with our own eyes and listen with our own ears the plight of our people. What we discovered is that it is injustice that hits the poor the hardest. We can no longer ignore their cries of rage while they wait for the promise of real change to happen in their lifetime. As you take the next big step, I hope that you will never lose your purpose and your passion for integrity and justice. There will be times when your honor will be put to the test. Be brave enough to always choose what is right, no matter how unpopular it may be. Like all of you, I often find myself at crossroads. Would I rather be right than popular? As Vice President, I often have to make unpopular decisions to do the right thing. And long after the election was over, I still find myself protecting the office against someone wanting to return to power by any means necessary. I was at the bottom rung when the campaign started. But immediately after my numbers started to pick up, the troll attacks and online bashing began. And disinformation became the name of the game. The struggle is real. At first, we let the disinformation campaign slide, thinking that we should focus on doing good in the world instead. But we decided that this is not enough. We also felt the need to push back against fake news, speak truth to power, and protect truth. We are doing the exact same thing in courts, protecting the Vice Presidency against those that seek to undermine our mandate. And we are doing this to protect the true will of our people and the dream of a nation where everyone thrives. But despite the difficulties, we persist. Dahil sa huli, umaasa pa rin tayo na palaging tama ang mananaig. Ganyan tayong mga Pilipino. When I look back at my life and that of my late husband, it is clear that all of the most defining moments in our lives, without exception, are preceded by junctures that require great courage and faith. I believe that the same will be true in our lives and in our country moving forward, as we strive to give our people a fighting chance for equality and justice. This is not the time to fear, and we as Filipinos must learn to speak truth to power and bear in mind the plight of the last, the least, and the lost. In closing, I wish to call on all of you today to honor our profession by refusing to stay safely hidden in the sidelines, while our people fight for their rights and our democratic institutions fight for their survival. We go against not a single entity, but a growing culture of apathy. We do not protect our people from a single oppressor now, the way we did during martial law, but the creeping, dangerous mentality that the rule of law and human rights are dispensable. The tendency to look away when Lady Justice speaks through her blindfold, and the folly of giving away our nation and our people's security and sovereignty. Because just as the ordinary acts of ordinary people saved our nation before, so can a misguided population derail the progress that was very near our grasp. Some of these are dark and heavy words, but do not mistake them for loss of hope. I still believe that our nation is meant for greatness, and that our people's hearts are in the right place. I dream of a nation that is not just prosperous, but one where everyone gets a fighting chance. I dream of a nation where everyone can walk on the streets safely at night, even the poor. I dream of a nation with institutions that are strong enough to protect the rule of law, justice, and equality. But this requires everyone, most especially lawyers, who know the law intimately, more than any other member of the society, to stand up and speak out. It is in times such as this that the legal profession, which you all aspire to join, will be called upon to stand by the oaths we take that bright day we join its ranks. When the time comes, we must not default. As Desmond Tutu once said, and I quote, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." Close quote. So class of 2018, may you always choose the path that leads to justice in favor of the last, the least, and the lost. Maraming salamat at congratulations muli sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay po!
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life.